So I know you've all been waiting for this, but we're going to talk to you today about Edmonton versus Calgary. Hey, thanks so much for coming back to my channel. We are going to talk, this is all about living in Edmonton for families, but what about comparing us to our southern neighbors in Calgary? And we seem to always have a rivalry with Calgary. And a lot of that stems from our sports. The Oilers and the Calgary Flames were always battling head to head. Started way back in the 80s when we had the glory years. So I know all you haters out there don't always see eye to eye with us hardcore Oiler fans, but hey, you gotta love the fact that Oiler fans are pretty loyal. So for everyone watching that doesn't know about Edmonton versus Calgary in terms of where we're located, we are located in the province of Alberta in Canada. We're on the western side of Canada. And Edmonton and Calgary are about a 3-hour drive. So it's not too far, but it's also not super close. One of the advantages of Calgary is that you're super close to the mountains. You're only about an hour, hour and a half away from the mountains. For us in Edmonton, going to Jasper is a little bit quicker than going into Banff, but it's not an hour drive. We're looking at probably about a 4-hour drive for us to get to the mountains. When you look at Edmonton and Calgary's population, Calgary is a larger city and people-wise. Edmonton has a lot of surrounding areas that we count into our population. When you look at just Edmonton specific, we don't really come to the numbers that Calgary's at, but when you add our surrounding areas, we're getting a little bit closer. But it's all about what kind of feel you're looking for. I find that Calgary has a lot of the head offices. It's a more white-collar town. Edmonton's more blue-collar town. There's still a lot of white-collar jobs here in Edmonton, but it's just the feel that you're looking for. Are you looking for a small town feel, or are you looking for more of a metro city feel? So what about things to do in Calgary versus Edmonton, or Edmonton versus Calgary? And we're looking specifically about families. So when you look at the food scene, there's a lot of local food options it's actually Calgary. Calgary has more options there. Edmonton still has quite a few. And you take a look at the different local scenes, it totally depends if you're a massive foodie or not a foodie, but there's definitely lots of different cuisines in both cities. We've got definitely in Edmonton, a smaller Chinatown than in Calgary. And when you look at the local small shops, there is a variety of them. Now, recently, I just went to Made by Marcus in Edmonton on White Avenue, but that is a Calgary-based company that actually came up here. Now, when you look at Edmonton versus Calgary for festivals in the summertime, who do you think wins? Actually, Edmonton. So Edmonton has more festivals. It's known as the City of Festivals, Festival City versus Calgary. Now, I'm not from Calgary, but I know Stampede is a big one. For some reason, people in Edmonton like to go down for that, and I did do that a few years ago because there's all this hype all the time, and I didn't really see the hype and the reason why people are going down for that, because we do have Klondike Days, which is the same venue, and actually Klondike Days is actually quite a bit bigger, I think. So you let me know in the comments why, if you go to Stampede, why is it so amazing compared to Klondike Days? And they both have horse races. Now Stampede has Stampede things, so you can watch different things, but I don't know. Tell me why you think Stampede is better than Klondike Days, or vice versa. It used to be called Klondike Days, but now it's called K Days. Okay, so the next comparison for things to do for families, I've talked lots about Edmonton's River Valley and how amazing it is for the kids, for people with no kids, to check out. So what does Calgary have, and is it better? Well, Calgary has the Bow Valley. Like, I really like the River Valley. It's bigger, more expanse, stretches more, there's a lot more options to see. Bow Valley is nice, but I'm gonna say River Valley wins on this front. Okay, so when you compare Edmonton and Calgary, you're also gonna look at housing costs. In terms of affordability, which one do you think is gonna win? Calgary, more metro city feel, or the Edmonton, more small town feel? Well, if you guessed right, it's actually Edmonton. Edmonton is absolutely more affordable housing-wise, especially for families, because you're not gonna get the same kind of house for your money. You're gonna get one house for your money in Calgary, and this house for the exact same price in Edmonton. So Edmonton and Calgary markets tend to actually follow each other. Edmonton tends to follow Calgary. Edmonton tends to be more affordable. Now, if you're looking at the rental market from Edmonton versus Calgary, you can see here that there are slight differences, but the rental market versus housing market kind of follow suit. Obviously, Edmonton having more affordable housing for buying is also the same as being more affordable to rent. So Edmonton versus Calgary, what's the weather like in Edmonton? Weather in Edmonton, weather in Calgary. Guess what? We are in the same province. There's only 3 hours between us. The saying about wait 5 minutes and wait for the weather to change, that's Alberta wide, not just specific to Edmonton or Calgary. Now, Calgary does have the Chinooks in the winter, and Chinooks, if you don't know what they are, there's a definition right there. But it keeps it a little bit warmer for Calgary than it does for Edmonton. But at the end of the day, the weather's pretty similar. It's not going to be too different. Both of us have the extreme temperatures. Calgary doesn't seem to have as extreme, but really, it's an Alberta weather. So if you don't like this Alberta weather, then you're probably going to want to move to British Columbia or somewhere completely different and a different continent altogether. Now, what about safety in Edmonton versus Calgary? Now, I don't really have necessarily an opinion on which I think is safer. I think when you look at safety, I do believe it's also a perception. Certain people have a viewpoint that Edmonton is safer than Calgary. Other people have a viewpoint that Calgary is safer than Edmonton. You got to kind of do what's best for your family. Look at what's important to you and look at the neighborhoods that you're actually able to afford. Now, if you're going to try to afford something in your budget, but you're wanting to go in a really expensive neighborhood, maybe that's not going to work. So then you end up in a lower price neighborhood, and not necessarily all the time are those the safest neighborhoods. Price and safety tend to actually correlate with one another. I know here we encourage our buyers to look at the Edmonton police crime map before deciding what neighborhoods they want to live in Edmonton, and I know Calgary would have something very similar. So if you're looking for comparisons in terms of what you think is safer, I do believe, in my opinion, that there's not a significant difference between the two. We're not looking at a massive metro city. Obviously, the more people in a city, the higher the chances of crime. I mean, I think that's pretty common sense. When you look at Vancouver and Toronto's numbers, totally different. And you also look at their housing numbers, totally different. So Edmonton versus Calgary, what are we gonna do? What's the conclusion? Well, I want you to comment down below, and I know we're gonna get lots of comments. Please try to keep them positive as to why you love Edmonton or why you love Calgary. Let's focus on the positive of why we love our cities that we're in. I do have lots of friends in Calgary, and I think it's a great place to live, but we also are partial to Edmonton, of course, that's why we live here. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time.